Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys, where we sit down with the marketing leaders shaping some of today's most innovative brands. I'm Christian Banach, and I explore the stories behind CMOs, how they lead, how they grow, and how they think about partnering with agencies. Cordell Cordell is the largest family law firm in the U.S., best known for its work with divorce, custody, and family law matters. Under new leadership, the firm is expanding its services into estate planning and modernizing how legal marketing and client experience work together at scale. Today, I'm joined by Chris Moloney, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Digital Officer. Welcome, Chris.
Hey, Christian, thank you.
So, Chris, you've stepped into this newly created role at Cordell, and they're evolving really beyond their traditional footprint. In these first few months, what's been maybe the most energizing or unexpected part of this transition for you?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I think the most exciting thing is that the legal industry is filled with a lot of jargon and a lot of terminology that is confusing to the average consumer. And the ability to use this platform to help educate people and make people feel more comfortable about any legal matter they're facing, there's a real opportunity to do that because no one else is doing that on a nationwide scale.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So, this is CMO Journeys, and we'd love to talk about your career. You've really had what I would consider a series of chapters. You've had journalism, brand storytelling, financial services, fintech, and now legal services. What's that through line that connects all those chapters for you and ultimately led you to this role?
Well, I guess the ironic start to my whole marketing journey was that my parents got me a Mac when I was in high school, and it was a relatively cool new thing back in the day. So I'm a little bit dated in terms of how I got into marketing, and I got so into the design aspects of the Mac that my path was kind of created for me. I became a designer through high school and college and just loved the graphic arts and just communication, the ability to communicate visually and to communicate something that's compelling and use really that to educate and open people's eyes. So that's what really got me into marketing. I think I originally, ironically, was pre-law in college, and now I sit in a law office and I'm not a lawyer. But nonetheless, I got into marketing and have kind of gone full circle now to being pre-law again. But marketing really to me was about taking communication to the next level, both verbal communication and visual communication. And so I started out really as a creative person. My first few jobs were creative directors and creative writers and totally embedded in the creative and the agency world. And then from there, migrated into database marketing and digital marketing, and then have now been a CMO for a number of years.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me a little bit about you've held these senior roles at both massive enterprises and then also some high growth, more tech driven type businesses. Were there moments where your view of modern marketing leadership changed along that journey? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess. Naturally, when you're with a small firm, you feel like you don't have a lot of resources and you wish you had the resources of a big company. And so you're jealous of the resources of a big company. Then you get to a big company, like I was with Wells Fargo for a number of years. And during that 5 year period, things moved fairly slowly. And so being a digital marketer, you feel like you're a year behind in everything you're trying to do. So then you say, I want to go to a smaller company. So you have this little bit of ebb and flow. I think where I've landed now in a nationwide company, but medium sized is the right fit for me. I feel great about it. But you do often have that yin and yang of life of do I want to be with a big company that has a lot of resources or do I want to be with a small company that's tech forward? I think the most important thing is if you're in a small company, you can appreciate the challenges of moving things through a big company because inevitably when you're a small tech oriented company, you're interacting with larger companies. So you have to understand the big company mentality. Similarly, if you're in a large company, you can't give up that agile thinking about digital marketing and technology. You can't forget that AI is taking over people's lives. You can't forget how important mobile is. So it's really the ability to cross train between large and small that I think is the most important thing for a marketer to understand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely nuances. As a small business owner myself, yeah, there's definitely envy sometimes of the resources, but like to your point, then dealing with some of our clients that are on the bigger side and seeing how much bureaucracy sometimes that you have to go through. I'm not always as envious, but so yeah, there's a pros and cons to both. Um, So looking back, was there maybe a risk that you took professionally that felt uncomfortable at the time, but when you look back now, ended up being really foundational to your ultimate trajectory?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest risk that I took was while I was at Wells Fargo, I had the opportunity to be CEO of a tech firm that specialized in digital marketing and social media. It was a company that we had used while I was at Wells Fargo, so they got to know me and I got to know them. But going from whatever it was, 100,000 employee company to a company of 100, it's a pretty stunning move. And it was a shock to the system. It was one of those things where I had read some studies where they had done some group studies way back in the day at Harvard, and people who had written goals achieved goals at a higher rate than people who didn't have written goals. So I had written on my timeline that by a certain age, I wanted to be a CEO of a company. And so this opportunity hit me right at the timeline that I had in my original goals from college. And I said, I got to do it. I got to know what it's like. The most amazing thing I think of being CEO of a company is I get in there, it's a growth opportunity, it's a tech company, and one of the first things I have to do is balance my budget, and I had to cut some of the marketing budget. And that was one of the most painful things I've ever had to do. To be on the other side of the fence and realize I had to cut the budget that I used to be the main defender of. But what it has allowed me to do is to see both sides. Now I understand how the CFO thinks and how the CEO thinks about budgets. And I understand obviously how the CMO and chief digital officer think about wanting their budget. And I think it was a bridge that I had to cross, and it's made me a better marketer and a better leader for sure, having done both.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Many, I think, in your shoes may not have that opportunity to sit in a CEO seat or a CFO seat. Is there any advice on if you don't have that opportunity, how to still bring that same type of mindset to the role?
Absolutely. I think, my biggest growth role was when I was CMO of Scottrade, which became Ameritrade and now is becoming Schwab. All of my competitors are now one company. So it would be interesting to be back in that industry where they're all one big happy family. But in those days, I realized my best advocate was the CFO. When I could take Google Analytics to him, when I could take Google AdWords to him and show him that marketing was driving real, specific, measurable return to the business, my budget became virtually unlimited based on how I could grow the business, which was a pretty amazing situation. When the CFO says, you don't have a budget, but you have to show me how many new customers you acquired and the cost per acquisition. So we were able to grow Scottrade. When I started, it was about 800,000 customers. And when I left, it was 3 million. And when they sold the business to Ameritrade, it was still about 3 million customers. We grew by not having a budget. We grew by not having a marketing budget. That's a pretty incredible place to be. And that was because it was a privately held company and I had a good relationship with the CFO. So my message to people would be, if you're a marketing person, get to know the CFO, know the spreadsheets that they're looking at and how they're being measured. If you do that, you can help them achieve their goal, not be in a situation where there's an adversarial role between marketing and finance.
Yeah. Great advice. So let's pivot to your new role now at Cordell Cordell. So you're, from what I understand, really the first true enterprise level CMO there. And I'm curious, what were some of the non-negotiables that you focused on first? I know you're still new to the role, but is it brand? Is it demand? Is it digital infrastructure? Organizational alignment? Talk to me a little bit about that.
As a CMO, it's weird that first 5 months that I'm here feel like 5 years and sort of like whatever, normal work years. You get a lot done in that first 5 months and you learn a lot. But I would say the important thing is to realize that, different industries adopt technology at a different rate. I think when you're in the legal industry, there's obviously a natural reluctance to lean too fast into AI and leverage AI because there's a lot of risk. That's true in financial services. It's true in healthcare. If you go online and look on a LinkedIn profile, you're going to see like 50 ads and articles about how you have to use AI in everything you do. But when you're in any sort of regulated industry, there's always going to be that sort of governor regulating how much you use AI. So the best way to manage to that, I think, is to say we're going to leverage it in areas that are low risk, and we're going to stay really educated on what's happening in digital technology, AI, what the future may look like, knowing that we're not going to be on the cutting edge, but we want to be fast followers. So I think that's probably the hottest topic right now. The other ironic thing I think is when you're dealing in an industry where telephone communication has been the basis of building the entire industry, whether it's financial advisory, which I worked in, whether it's, the mortgage industry, finance industry, and now in legal industry, there's a relationship between them in that clients still like knowing there's a person that they're interacting with as a financial advisor or a lawyer. It's true in medical. The concept of the human interaction going away is just not going to happen. There isn't the disintermediation that you might have seen 10 or 20 years ago, for example, with travel agents. In finance, law, and legal, humans are still going to be right there.
Yeah.
Finance, law, and medical, I should say. Human interaction is still critical. So the digital experience has to enhance the human to human experience, not take away from it. And I think that's the most important thing, I think, as a chief digital officer, is to understand, use technology to add to the human to human contact, not to replace it. A lot of technologies today, whether it's a chat technology or an AI technology, is talking about removing the human. And it's really risky, I'd say, in an industry like mine. You have to figure out how to multiply the human rather than remove the human.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So tell us about like how are you looking to bring that to life there at Cordell and Cordell?
Yeah, one of the ways I would say is we really aggressively use chat on our website. We may be the most chat user of all legal firms in the country. One of our non-competitor legal firms that markets a lot, Morgan and Morgan, they're pretty advanced in their thinking. The legal industry is not going to be on the cutting edge. They're not going to be the most cutting edge in terms of using technology the way an e-commerce company might, but we listen and learn from how they're using it. Chat for us is not about directing people away from the phone. We actually have live chat agents 24 hours a day. We are not about using chat to drive you to AI. We don't send you to a menu. We don't send you a script. We want to connect with people how they want to connect. They may want to start chatting with you online or even texting through SMS before they talk to you. So it's an entry point to the communication, not a diversion of the communication. So that's probably the most important thing. When I worked in another company, another large mortgage finance company, their mission was to use chat to redirect people away from the human. And it was just a miserable experience for the consumer, and 90% of the time they got frustrated. So the way to use chat, I think, is to really think about these technologies, chat and SMS, as ways to engage and get better engagement in a way that the client wants to engage. You're letting the client pick the channel. You're not picking a channel that directs them to the low cost. You're picking the channel that the client wants. That is the winning strategy.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's a great way to look at it. So I know Cordell. How I am familiar with Cordell has really been your positioning around dad's rights and father's advocacy messaging. And I know in speaking with you that actually is the business isn't as maybe heavily focused on dad's rights, and women are actually making up a huge portion. So would love to know a little bit more about how you think about evolving, that brand responsibly while still kind of staying true to the mission. Like, tell us a little bit about how you're doing that.
Yeah, that's a really interesting evolution. When the business started 35 years ago, there was a significant difference in how courts viewed men and women in a divorce, especially as it related to custody and as it related to finances and who's the head of household. We've evolved dramatically over 35 years as a society. And so you have households that are equal. You obviously have women who are the breadwinner. There's a total shift, I think, in that 35 years of how households are managed. So when the business started, I think there was a belief that men needed more advice, they needed more guidance, and potentially they were working against some pre-existing laws that may not work in their favor. Today, I think most states would consider themselves to be more balanced between men and women. And surely with regard to finances and custody, there's a greater balance. We have more of our attorneys are female than male, and most recently we had a month where we had more women on our website than men on our website. So we're responding to the fact that the need for having representation and a partner in your court is pretty equal between genders. I do think, though, historically, there is a situation where men want to know that there's someone on their side and helping them out, and that has been a message that has worked for the firm, and I think will continue to work for the firm. And we do have resources that are unique to helping men. But generally speaking, yeah, I think it's an opportunity now to say that the challenges that people face when dealing with family law are multivarious and not specific to gender. The other thing I think under the umbrella of family law is you have a lot of things that fall under family law. Adoption falls under family law. Prenuptial agreements fall under family law. There are more and more of those today because of the balanced nature of households. When you have households who are getting married at a later age and they've already established themselves, there's some legal things that need to happen to reinforce and support the marriage, in addition to challenges that occur in a family or with a marriage. You have a lot of complexities in the military when people go away to the military and they need to have legal protection and things of that nature. So there's a lot going on that isn't maybe in the traditional sense. There's a lot of legal support that we do that's a much broader sense in helping families make the right decisions and helping families where they need support from the courts and make sure that they're making the decisions, not the courts making the decisions.
Yeah, yeah. So as I understand, you're also not only evolving in that department, but also expanding into estate planning and some probate services as well.
Yeah.
From a marketing standpoint, how do you introduce a new service line without maybe diluting what the brand is already known for?
Yeah, that is going to be a challenge, and it's not something that I would say we've figured out how to thread that needle perfectly yet. They are two different industries. A lot of times in the family law space, if someone is wanting to engage a family law attorney, they have an existing need and they understand that need. In estate planning, you have a situation where roughly only 24% of Americans have any sort of estate plan, will, trust, or anything of that nature. In some states, it makes a ton of sense to have your home in a trust. There's a lot of tax savings. There's a lot of reasons to have a trust financially for a lot of people. Realistically, if you have a house or children or a good paying job, there's a lot of things that put you in a threshold where you should have a trust. You should have a power of attorney. You should have a will. And yet only 24% of Americans do. So there's a huge upside there through education. And I would call it proactive outreach, where you're doing more of what I would call demand creation in the marketing land, where you're educating people that they need this thing, that it's beneficial to them to look at it. And education is the forefront of that. So we intend to be the largest educator in the country on why estate planning, wills, and trusts are really valuable. The second component that I'll mention is the term estate planning is a problem. Estate planning makes you think you're talking to people who are wealthy. Estate planning is something you think needs to happen with your grandparents. The reality is, as soon as someone gets married, as soon as someone has children, as soon as someone has a significant job increase, these are the places where you have to look at your portfolio. Financial planning and estate planning are things that have to happen much earlier in life than most Americans think. So we're trying to help educate people around life stages, and that's going to be a really interesting marketing challenge. How do we bring education together with services that we offer? And frankly, our estate planning services are really moderately priced, and so they're really built for middle America.
Sure, sure. So tell me about that. When you're bringing it to life, what does your internal marketing team look like? Are you working with outside partners? How is that is that evolving?
Yeah, we have a lot of agencies. So we are not an agency of record shop. I probably have upwards of 10 agencies that interact with us on some basis. So it's a pretty widespread field. In this particular case, I do have an expert that we are bringing in who has done product branding and naming and has written a lot of books on the subject. And I won't name him yet, but I'll name him maybe in the article because I'm still working on his contract. But we are bringing him in to really think about how do we redefine estate planning. Like I said to you, It's not for the wealthy. It's not for the older population. It's really designed for middle America. They need to understand that you don't want the courts making decisions on your behalf. And you need to have a plan for what you want your family, your children, your spouse, your whole world to look like. You've got to define that so it's not defined for you by a probate court. So the reality is it's something we want to educate people to do sooner, but we're probably going to have to rename it. We're going to leverage our brand. I believe Cordell and Cordell plays a role, but there's an opportunity for a sub brand. I tell this story here, having come from the mortgage industry. Rocket Mortgage that we all know today was originally Quicken Loans. It wasn't that long ago that they were Quicken Loans. You can go back and look at the history of the brand. Rocket emerged when they started talking about being able to apply through their technology online and to apply on their phone. Rocket really emerged more from a technology perspective, whereas Quicken Loans was still there. The brand became Rocket. Rocket took over Quicken. Quicken was the brand that they acquired to try to grow because Quicken was a known entity. So what you just have to think about is brands evolve and emerge. And so whether we have a sub brand for this product or whether it's under the umbrella, I think remains to be seen. But we have extraordinary brand awareness nationwide. We have a great reputation. I think we want to leverage it, but I see a significant opportunity to have a sub brand, and we're figuring that out now. And so, yes, I have a singular expert who's going to do that. I have some PR folks who are going to help me launch it. I have some media people who are going to help me figure out how to position it. To be honest with you, Christian, it's a little bit of trial and error. You can build a great marketing plan, you can build a great strategy, but until you get out in the marketplace, you don't know if it's going to work. We also believe in research. I'll add one more thing. I also have a research expert and a research firm who helps us with everything from focus groups to quantitative research, and we're doing that right now around estate planning. So it's a merger of kind of creative strategy, digital and creative testing, and research. Those three together build a brand. If you try to do it from just one of those, it's a one-legged stool. Like, it doesn't work. You got to really have those three together to build something and launch it.
Yeah, that's great. I love how you're thinking about that and assembling the A team to tackle that. So as you know, there's many agencies that listen to this and read these articles. We hear time and time again, and I know you've probably had a very deep network of agencies that you've worked with historically. But let's say there is something specific that you just don't have a partner for. Curious, like, where do you go to find your next partner? How do they get on your radar in the first place?
Sure. Well, there are some genuinely good CMO groups that I'm a part of, and I do often reach out to CMOs and talk to them. I also have in the past leveraged some of the CMO organizations within Gartner and Forbes and these others that have really great groups, Wall Street Journal. There's some great CMO groups. And so I try to go to events and really hear other CMOs. Obviously, there are a lot of agencies and experts who speak at those events. So that's one of the places I hear some of my best new ideas. I first learned about chat from going to one of these events, and I happened to be there with my CEO, and he said, I want to add chat to our platform. So there are places where those events do pay off. But I would say more organically, if someone reaches out to me from an agency, and I do get probably too many outreach, but if I do get an outreach, the more tailored and personalized it is, where they've actually done a little homework, maybe even taken their strongest suit, their greatest skill set, their superpower, and shown me just a taste of it applied to my business, that's a pretty compelling thing. I think usually you'll take a call when someone's already done some homework. And that isn't just sending a LinkedIn email that has your name and your title or describes whatever was in your last press release. Those are not what I'm talking about. But if you have a superpower and you're an agency, go into a CMO and tell them what you've done to look at their business and where there's opportunity. And if you can do that little extra work on the front end, you're going to get more of those intro calls. Then when you get that intro call, keep playing that card, keep playing that strong suit, and show them that you're an expert at something. There is a concept, and I have been on the agency side, I've been on the consultancy side, and there's a phrase used especially in technology consulting, but really in any consulting, around the concept of land and expand. You want to land on whatever your strength is, and then get to know the organization and see other opportunities to expand. What companies struggle with is when they try to come in and say we're good at everything, or we're good at these 3 things or these 5 things. There's a huge risk there because it becomes overwhelming for the buyer to really A, believe that you have 5 superpowers, and B, you're overwhelmed by putting all of your eggs in one basket. So that would be my advice, is think strategically about getting into a client and then putting your best person on how to expand with that client.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that. And I would assume that a lot of the partners that when you first work with start more as a smaller project before getting into some huge engagement. And we same thing. We advise clients it's more of a land and expand. Don't expect to send a cold email and become their AOR, next week. That's just not how business is done. So
True.
no, I love that. Curious, one more question here. In terms of awards, how much value do you put? Is that something you're looking for in terms of agency awards? Is that something you're monitoring, looking at? Is that how you evaluate or select agencies, or is that really not something that factors in much?
It's an interesting question. I think awards have played a pretty good role in creative agencies. I had the opportunity to submit and get nominated for some Cannes Golden Lions a few years back. So I got invited by the agencies to the south of France. So I'm always in if there's a trip to the south of France. So that's an easy one. But outside of that, I would say, there's a lot of marketing technology. We do pay attention to Gartner and Magic Quadrants. That is a place if you're a technology company to consider. And then in terms of agency awards, yes, I do believe they add value. I don't think it has to be necessarily a big sizzle reel type thing, but where they add the most value is to say, we got an award for taking this company from here to here. It's the case study behind the award that convinces me they can take action. The award in and of itself might get my attention, but I have to hear quickly, what did they do to help this company really explode? How did this creative or this strategy or this tactic they took drive the business? That's the most important thing. Too many agencies, and even agencies that I've been a part of, have viewed the trophy as the end game. The end game for me is, what did you do and how did it help the client? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, this has been great. I got one question, shifting gears a bit. Outside the office, what helps you reset or stay grounded when you're making these high stakes decisions professionally?
Yeah, great question. I do talk at work dinners and outside of work, maybe often about challenges that I face and talk cross industry. So I do think it's a place where I do rely on my network probably pretty heavily. And as I've mentioned to you, I do have some CMO networks that have been really gold for me in the past. So I think that's really valuable. And then actually to bring people together. So if I get invited by, I do work with the NHL and the St. Louis Blues, I do work with the MLB and the Cardinals. If they offer me a suite or some event, it's great to say, hey, can I bring a few marketing people to it and bring some peers and get to know them and learn from them. And that's always been a huge value to me. So I think that network, really fostering that network, is the most important. I think my network is who I lean on the most, and it comes down to finding time when you're not necessarily with family and when you're not necessarily working to really get connected to the network, get to some events. I try to do an event a quarter. I know that a lot of video events have replaced in-person events. There's nothing like chatting with someone at an in-person event. I went to the Wall Street Journal tech event last year, which is a combination of marketing technology. It's in Southern California. It's a pretty high-end event. I think it's at least $5,000 to go. I think upwards of $10,000 to go. It's not a cheap event, but man, I picked up 2 or 3 technology things that just blew me away. So it was worth the investment, and I'll continue to try to go to events.
Yeah. No, events, I think post-pandemic have definitely been super hot, and I agree. This is great what we're doing here, but it would be great to have been able to do this in person as well.
Yeah, let's get together in person sometime. Let me know where you're headed next.
Love that. Cubs-Cardinals game. I'll be down.
All right.
Very good. So, Chris, I really want to thank you for this conversation. It's been great. And everybody watching, don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for more conversations with the marketing leaders shaping what's next. I'm Christian Banach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks, Christian.